food was really my best friend, because every time I was feeling these strong emotions that I didn't know how to handle, I would go to food. But then also my worst enemy. I didn't realize this really until I was fascinated by the fact that I could count my ribs.
How did you justify that behavior to yourself at that time?
That's where the compassion and the grace came in, because I'm like, yeah, but it wasn't about the body. I just didn't know better.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Fit Vegan podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Chantal Di Donato. Sounds so great. I love saying it. She's a board-certified holistic health coach, holistic nutritionist, and a plant-based nutritional expert. Her passion lies in empowering women to achieve optimal health and well-being. She's also a functional movement teacher and energy healer, helping individuals embrace movement as a key component of their wellness journey. Her commitment to spreading awareness about holistic health and plant-based nutrition has led her to become a published author, public speaker, and guest presenter at CUNY. Additionally, she's had the honor of being a guest presenter at PCRM's One Healthy World, Armand Saint. I love that I was able to say that in French. And she's also the host of the Green Life podcast, which I've had the pleasure of being on. So her mission is to provide women facing their dark night of the soul with a clear path to wellness, following a kind to all beings, wholesome approach where you can learn, experiment, and truly thrive with a personal plan that empowers you through knowledge. All right, welcome to the Fit Vegan podcast. I'm your show host, Maxime Sigouin, and I'm the founder and CEO of Fit Vegan Coaching, a company that is on a mission to help 10,000 people get lean, thrive, and reduce their risk of chronic illnesses by 2033 and 1 million by 2050. I believe that having a fit, healthy body and mind is the foundation to living an incredible life, and this is what the show will give you if you choose to listen and implement. Enjoy the episode and have a great day. So Chantal, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm honored.
Yeah, I'm happy we're able to make it happen. And so for the people listening, do you mind kind of sharing where you're from? Because you have a little bit of a time difference.
Yeah, I'm based in Portugal right now, and but I'm not Portuguese. I don't actually have any ties to Portugal per se, but I'm South African Italian, and I lived in London for quite a long time. And then I really needed to get out of London. I was like, okay, I need to be in nature, and Portugal was really coming up. A lot of people, we had a lot of friends that were Portuguese. A lot of people were talking about Portugal. And everybody always goes to the south, and we were told the north is a brilliant place to grow food. There is a lot of water, and there is. It rains in winter quite a bit. And we came and visited, and I just fell in love with it. And we moved. So I've been here for 5 years.
Beautiful. Yeah, you needed some sun. I get it. That's why I did the same thing. That's why I moved to California. So would love to ask you, let's just start from the beginning. What made you go plant-based originally?
Yeah, so everything kind of started when I was a child. So I didn't have a good relationship with my body or food. I just never really understood what that skewed relationship came from until much later. But just to jump to why I went plant-based, it really came down to the fact that at 30 years old, I was still struggling with eating disorders. I was very disorderly eating. I was just binging, starving, working out 2 hours a day, not seeing results, feeling really stressed, and relying on food to give me comfort. But then when I went for my blood test, when I thought I was actually eating very healthy, because I was very much restricting, I was just having lean protein from animals, and then, restricting everything else, just having like vegetables. But then on my binges, I would just go crazy with the sugar. And when I went for my blood work at 30, I had elevated glucose, I had elevated cholesterol, and I was just like, but how is this possible? Like, I eat, such a restricted way. I was literally not able to really enjoy a meal because I was just so stressed about how much, what I was eating. And I was just struggling with this thought. And then about a year after, while I was trying to be on a diet again, dieting since I was 13. So like very much, okay, I'm going to go on a diet and try to like restrict more and more and more. And then I heard Dr. Neil Barnard talk about diabetes in a way that I never heard anybody before. He was talking about fat being the issue in muscle cells, and how that stops the insulin from opening the channels to bring the glucose into the blood and into the cell. And I was like, this is interesting. Because obviously, when you talk to anybody about raising glucose and trying to bring it down, it's all about cutting out the carbs. That was very much the old thought about it. Well, it
Yeah.
still is kind of there. But, and every time I did that, it just didn't work anyway. Like my glucose was always elevated. And then I started just following his advice and like cutting out, fats. But I started with animal fats. So I started just with animal proteins and just animal fats, saturated fats, and I naturally just enjoyed having more vegetables and fruit. And I didn't even think about it, but I got healthier. I lost weight without trying. I wasn't dieting. I wasn't restricting. I was just enjoying my food. And
Yeah.
because I was eating whole food before, even if it was animal based, it was easy to transition for me into a whole food plant based diet. So that's time one. That's why I went plant based.
So, how was it hard removing the animal products to kind of transition to eating whole foods for you originally?
Interestingly, wasn't actually. The only thing I missed a little bit was goat cheese, just because it's got a very specific flavor, and
Yeah.
fish. But more than the taste, I actually really enjoyed the smell of cooked fish. Like I really used to do that. That was before I actually went vegan, though, because I was plant based. But then after a couple of months, it clicked for me what it was all about, which made a big
Yeah.
shift when I understood that I loved animals, and then what I was eating were animals. And it's funny to say now because I'm like, duh. But then I was like, oh my God, yeah, sure. The smell of cooked anything when you put oils and spices will smell nice. But
Yeah.
I was eating an animal and I'm like, I love animals. What was I doing? So it wasn't actually hard because I clicked. And then I realized that my body was feeling better. I was sleeping better. I was, again, not really thinking about what I was eating. I was just enjoying the food. So it was really easy to transition. I didn't feel like it was an effort at all.
So you mentioned earlier that you started dieting when you were 13 years old. Why did you start so young?
So I mentioned at the beginning that my problems with food really started in my childhood. And that was really, really dependent on witnessing a very bad relationship between my mother and the food. My mom had me when she was really, really young. So she was still a teenager. She was 18. And I think she was still navigating how she felt about herself, but also how she was dealing with emotions. And she was doing it through food. So binging and then purging. And of course, at the time, because I was a child, I saw that behavior, but I didn't necessarily acquire it straight away because I didn't have the concept of what my body looked like. I was just simply a child. But I realized later that I was actually using food as comfort as well. It's just that I didn't connect it to how I was looking at the time. But then, of course, I became a teenager. I started a puberty. My hormones started changing. So my body started changing and having shapes. And I wasn't looking like a child anymore. And so the awareness of what I was looking like came to the forefront. And together with the emotional attachment of food, then came this awareness of what my body looked like. And I didn't want to be fat because my mom, she didn't want to be fat. And also, and we were never really, we were never fat, but it's like, she had this image that a beautiful woman is a skinny woman. Maybe the 80s, I don't know. Um, and
Hmm.
um, and then my sister was very slim, very skinny. I was very athletic. I always did sports, so I had always muscles on me. And she always compared us, and so
Yeah.
it really got to me after a while. And I started just thinking, okay, well, to be small, I need to really just restrict. And I was surrounded by this culture of dieting. In the 90s, it was really big. My dad and my mom separated, but when my dad remarried, he remarried a woman that also was always on a diet. So I was really surrounded by that kind of behavior. And then, of course, that was my norm. And by the time I was 17, I became anorexic. So we moved to Mauritius, and I don't know if it's because people live on the beach and they just generally have a certain body because of the sea, more sporty, more outside, of course. But my peers were all skinny and I wasn't. And I was like, oh my God, I need to fit in here. So I just started dieting severely. And within 2 months, I lost 20 kilos. So I went from 63 kilos to 43. I'm not quite sure what that is in pound, but very, very
Wow.
skinny. I have big bones, so I didn't look.
How tall are you? Just to put it in
I'm
perspective.
167. Um, so I was really underweight.
Okay.
You will have to probably fill this in pounds and
I'm just converting
yeah,
it.
good call. um, but
That's 5 foot
okay,
4,
5'4".
basically.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So um, I was very underweight, and but because I have big bones, I didn't look terrible, but people could see. So the school really got concerned. But in any case, after some interventions, I started eating again, but the emotional stuff didn't get tackled. So I still carry on having a very bad relationship with food, where food was really my best friend because every time I was feeling these strong emotions that I didn't know how to handle, I would go to food. But then also my worst enemy because I felt guilty.
Mm.
I hated myself. I wanted to just disappear in a way, but also like, okay, I need to be perfect. I need to control. I was basically projecting all these emotions into food, and I didn't realize this really until much later. Even when I became vegan, yes, I sorted some of my distorted relationship with food, but the emotional work only came about late 30s when I hit another wall and another big issue with my
Yeah.
health. So I carried on this very ping pong relationship with food. Like, I love you, I hate you, I love you, I hate you. But the food was representing me. I didn't love myself. Um, so I was playing a very dangerous game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask
Hmm.
you. This is like, I think it's a clear demonstration of how much power and impact a parent has over their child, because you wouldn't have thought by yourself at 17 to not eat, to eat less food, or that you were overweight or whatever, even though you weren't. You wouldn't have thought to go down that path if your mom would have never had that behavior and you wouldn't have grown up around it, because you would have maybe been like, if your mom would have exercised and
Mm.
ate healthy, that would have been your blueprint that would have been passed on from your mom. But since your mom was like, hey, let's just starve ourselves, you're like, well, that's what mom did, so I might as well do the
Hmm.
same thing. So it just shows a tremendous power that a parent has over a child, because you're literally passing off the blueprint of how to handle these specific situations.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say that because I just did my 100th episode of The Green Life. So I celebrated by sharing something, a message from me. And one of the things that came up was, how parents don't have any support and they're not coached to be parents. And just because we can give birth to a human being, that doesn't mean that we're good parents. And it's not because I'm criticizing humans for being unable to do that. It's just that humans are very complex already. Parents are human beings. I know we create this image that parents are these superheroes, but they are human beings struggling. And if they don't have support, they're just gonna project all the trauma that they have on us. And then I also believe that, especially mothers, we women carry a very, very strong lineage that passes on a lot more than just genetics or even mitochondria. But like, even the mitochondria, think about how powerful that is, and it comes from our mothers. Um, I think there is a lineage of trauma that is
Yeah.
passed on through our moms, especially, and it really comes through that female line because we portals, right? We portals of life. We portals of a lot of spiritual things that happen, and if we don't fix ourselves, we are going to just keep on reproducing the same trauma going forward. So yeah, it's very important for a parent to be acutely aware of what they are doing themselves, so they're not affecting the children by giving the wrong examples or mindset, or skewing the reality, that because we are all faced with a lot of different things and things are always changing. Like even the youth now, they have to navigate no more trauma. Plus, living this artificial life right online, and so the reality is not really real anymore. And so if
Yeah.
you don't have a strong foundation where parents are really grounded and they are coached into being good guides, you are going to struggle. And I certainly struggled. And I mean, I also had this thing where my parents were fighting all the time. They were divorcing. I became the parent in the home. So I had responsibilities which no child should ever have. And I grew up being my mother's mom. So our lineage was really also messed up because she wasn't like connected to me as a mother. I just never felt like I had a mother. And, I, this hit me when I went through the beginning of my dark night of the soul at 38. When 5 years ago, I had this, as I said, I spiraled into more disease and gave myself type 2 diabetes properly this time, not just hyperglycemia, but I also had adrenal fatigue, and I just felt this massive overwhelm. And I realized that I just never had a mom. And when I needed her, when I broke my wrist, we moved to Portugal, I needed support. I didn't get it. I was expected to still look after her when she came here to help me. And I just had all this anger that came out. And I think it really destroyed me for a while.
Hmm.
And only when I started really doing the work, and actually I had to stop contacts with a lot of people. I had to just get away from everyone. In a way, COVID was good for me because the world stopped and I could stop. Um, and that gave me the chance to actually do a bit of
Yeah.
healing. Um, and we can talk about it a little bit more. But I had to really disconnect, and I realized this relationship with my mother was just not normal. And I spent 2 years now talking to her. I'm talking to her now, but I have to keep very, very strong boundaries because I still see her going in loops about certain things that I don't want to get drawn into. So, but I learned how to navigate it because ultimately it was really affecting me a lot. I just never realized that. It was just like, pop.
Yeah, I'm sure. And and I'll be upfront, like I'm not a parent, but I've coached probably like 700 parents, so I have some idea of like some of the stories, but not from personal experience. I only have caregiving experience, which is slightly different. Like your child's life is not on the line every single day, right? Compared to if
Mm,
you're a caregiver, but like everyone's going through something, and everyone is dealing with something. And then I see so many parents try to put up that front that they have everything under control, and a lot of parents, and not even just parents, like humans, will try to kind of do what potentially what you did, is just go into their own cocoon and be like, oh, I'm going to deal with my shit, but like show the rest of the world that I have it under control. But in reality, I feel like people say the thing that they want others to see or perceive, but their actions are the thing that are demonstrating the trauma that's underlying. And so people are saying of like, no, no, I'm like this and these things are happening, but their actions are showing the opposite. And that's what everyone else sees. That's what your partner sees. That's what your kid sees. That's what your family sees. And so I think it's important to kind of open up and ask for help,
yeah.
because no one's perfect. You and I have our own shit. Everyone listening has their own shit. Um, so I want to dive back. Like I'm working my way up
Mm,
on your timeline of your journey. So I think you mentioned it's at 17 you became
yeah.
anorexic. Um, I have experience with
Hmm.
binge eating, but not
Yeah.
with anorexia. How I'm curious as to how was that? What do you think led you to that point? And as human, we can self-justify any behavior.
Yeah.
So like, how did you justify that behavior to yourself at that time?
So I started dieting again to try and fit in, be smaller, to fit in with my friends at school. I'd never thought about lose how much weight I would lose. To be honest, I just thought maybe if I lose a couple of kilos and I look a little bit slimmer, I look like everybody else that is at school. I mean, I don't even think I was that
Mm,
much bigger. I have to deal with body dysmorphia, which I did before, and I'm still dealing with now. But um, I I just then never thought about the weight, but I started. restricting and restricting. So I started having breakfast, and then I would just have one meal a day, and it would be just protein and some veggies, and sometimes just protein. Then my mother actually went to give birth to my brother, and she really wanted him to be born in Rome because she loves Rome. So my stepdad and my mom traveled away. So I was alone in Mauritius because I was at school. I had to be there, and the only person there was my the housekeeper, and she would cook, but I wasn't necessarily eating her food. I started just this is funny. I was just eating rice, white rice with soy sauce or popcorn. You can lose weight on carbs. I was like carb surviving on carbs. I was losing all this weight. Um, and I lost 43, I lost 20 kilos without
Yeah.
actually realizing. When my mom came back from Italy after a month and a half, she was in shock. She's like, what the hell? But then when I noticed that I was slimmer, and then my mom actually paid attention to me, that I was getting, she was concerned about me.
Mhm.
I think I felt that I need to not be 100% strong, because then she cares and she's going to think I'm weak, and then she has to be there for me as a mom. And I think when I think back, that's probably the rationale. And also the fact that I feel like, well,
Yeah.
nobody's saying that I have to lose weight anymore, or that I'm too big, because now they're actually thinking I'm too small. So it's great. And I think that that became my thing. Like, I'm like everybody else now. My mom is concerned about me, the school is concerned about me, and I guess I was feeding, maybe in a narcissistic way, without really being aware of being a narcissist, and not in a like not in a negative way, but I felt like I was getting attention, which I craved. I guess I craved, because I always felt like I wasn't getting attention. I was just getting these responsibilities instead of actually being nurtured. But because people were worried about me, I felt nurtured, you know? So that's how I kind of really relaxed into
Yeah. So
that.
it was like positive reinforcement to a certain
In a
extent.
way, yes. Although it got boring quite quickly, because I also hate when people are always like in my face. So I'm just like, okay, now I have to, like, the school was really like super concerned, and I was getting too many comments all the time. So that's why I actually, when they started helping me, we started eating again. I did it because I was like, oh my God, get off my back already. Because now it wasn't like concern anymore. It's like they were on a mission, but I felt like I wasn't free anymore. It's funny because it's like this these emotional stuff that happens in the background. We are so unaware of it at that time, but like when you look back, it's like, yeah, that is like, textbook. And so I think, I because of that, I came out of it relatively quickly, within 2 years. But also another factor was this: I really existed, but I wasn't really living, because I didn't have the energy. I was not sleeping that well at all. I was like uncomfortable in my body. So I wasn't sleeping well. And then I was falling asleep throughout the day. So I wasn't actually able to do anything. I was just like, even getting the remote control from the coffee table, it was like an undertaking for me. So I just felt probably that, well, this is not
Yeah.
worth it. you know?
It's so interesting because, and again, I've done something similar and I'm sure a lot of people have, but it's like we all want love. We all want to fit in. We all want love from the people that we care about, and we're sometimes willing to do, quote unquote unhealthy
Mm,
things to get that form of attention. And what I find interesting about your story is that it was more about like losing weight, but you didn't really have a threshold of
mm,
what that was. It was just like lose weight and you end up losing 20 kgs, which is pretty significant. I did the math. You were basically 5'4", 90 and 94
mm.
pounds, right? Which is really light. But then on the flip side, it's interesting for you to have been like, I want love and attention, but then it was like, not like that. That's too much. Let me go back the
Yeah.
opposite direction now. And I feel like I could see why it would cause some yo-yo
Mm.
dieting, right? Some yo-yo with your weight in your history, because like I want attention, but not like that. So let's go back. But then you're in the
Yeah.
opposite side, and that positive reinforcement, it's more like negative
Yes.
positive reinforcement, because I feel like a lot of people go through that where it's oh, you look so good, you lost some weight, but you don't know how the person is doing it. They may be
Yeah.
starving themselves when they get home. They may be making themselves puke. They might be doing 3 hours of cardio every single day. And so I feel like people have to be
Yeah.
careful with the positive reinforcement because you don't know the methodology that people are using, and you might just be reinforcing them not
Yes,
eating or doing something unhealthy.
exactly.
So it's very
And that's a very
interesting.
good point you made there. Especially because then when I left Mauritius and I came to Europe, um, and even when I went to the UK, I still had this up and down with my weight, and my relationship with food was good and bad and good and bad and good and bad. It was just bad all the time, but I was like very controlled and then not controlled, controlled and not controlled. And I was working out 2 hours a day, every single day, 7 days a week, and 1 hour cardio, 1 hour weights. But the funny thing is that at the time I didn't have my family around, so it wasn't about getting attention because I wanted attention from them. It was more about, okay, I know how I was when I was skinny. I was more comfortable. Now I'm not skinny, but I don't want to be fat.
Hmm.
So I need to control. I need to like work out. I want to have the perfect body because I was looking at everybody else. And I was focusing on how I looked instead of how I felt once again. Um, and I mean, I was a mess. I
Yeah.
was a freaking mess because emotionally, I just didn't have the tools to deal with any of it, any of my childhood trauma, any of the way anything I felt about my parents, anything I felt about anything. I was just really holding on, and even the fact that my body composition was the problem. It wasn't so much that I was overweight or was ever fat. It was the body composition where my body was retaining onto fat because I think subconsciously that was a protective mechanism. It's like, don't worry, we're here to cushion you because you're not ready to deal with stuff. And so now when I started working with my emotions, and I eat a lot, but my body composition has completely changed. Like, I'm mostly muscles. I lost so much fat, but I haven't lost like a ton of weight. I mean, I'm 60 kilos. I am definitely heavy in brackets, like, but I don't have this problem of feeling fat because I just allowed myself to do so much inner work that it's like my body's like, we are ready to shed some of the fat to cushion you because now you can deal with it. So I think at that subconscious level is that strong. So
Yeah.
that definitely, a lot of people, I think, sometimes we actually are covering ourselves, not just with clothes, but actually with the fat that can cushion us because we really need that kind of nurturing, that kind of protection. The body knows, right? And we are made to survive, and it's not just the biological stuff. There's such a subconscious element to it. It's really, really powerful.
Yeah. I want to dive into the emotional component of it because I believe that if not 100% of people, at least 99.9% of people,
Yeah.
that's their issue. It's always the emotions and the trauma. It's never the necessarily the methodology. But before I dive into that, you shared something about being skinny and feeling skinny.
Yes.
And I want to ask you what that is for you because when I think about being fit and lean, to me there's a sensation of how my stomach
Hmm.
feels, right? I know I can stretch and like the skin is
Yeah.
tight. I know that I can move and I feel my back being tight versus moving and feeling the love handles kind
Yeah.
of folding together, right? Like it's more of a feeling than necessarily a number on
Yeah.
the scale. So for you, were you more attached initially to how you looked in
Mm.
the mirror versus how the body felt when you were that fit, when you were that
Yeah.
lean?
So it was both actually, because when I looked in the mirror, I was fascinated by the fact that I could count my ribs. That sounds crazy. It is crazy, but
Mm.
I was like, I can see my bones because I would never see my bones.
So you weren't counting six pack,
I
you were
was
counting
counting
ribs,
ribs.
basically.
I when I became anorexic, I wasn't about the muscle. I didn't really have that consciousness about it. Now I actually, that's exactly it. I feel like, hey, I can touch my abs and I actually can feel my abs, and it's muscle. Like, I'm not skinny. I feel good. It's tightness and awesome. And the only reason I know how much I weigh is because somebody challenged me to check. I never get on a scales. I hate it. So I
Yeah.
yeah, the weight doesn't matter, but it's like BMI is not a perfect science to me. It's like, how do you look, how do you feel? Like, I know that my visceral fat has gone away. I mean, I did my blood work, it was the best blood work of my life, I should frame it. So I was like, brilliant. But at the time it was how I looked in the mirror and counting the bones and being like, I am skinny, I can count my bones, I can see my
Hmm.
bones. um I remember when I was at the beach, there was some girls that had their scapula bones out, and it's a physio, like it's a anatomy. It's not,
Yeah.
it's how you made up. Is some people had it more prominent than others, so it wasn't like they were skinny. But I always was like, I don't have that because I don't naturally have prominent scapula bones sticking out, and I could see my scapula, so I was like, I've arrived. I look like everybody else. Isn't that crazy?
That's so interesting because I grew up with protruding scapula. And I wanted the opposite. I wanted a flat back. I didn't want my shoulder blades to
Yeah,
stick out. So it's so interesting how we like craved
yeah,
different things.
yeah.
Um, so now I'm curious, like now looking back at all those things that you desired and aspired to be, how does it feel now to kind of look back at that?
There's a little bit of embarrassment in a way that is like, oh my God, was I really that shallow? Was I really that stupid? But I think through the healing journey, it was like, okay, if I have to just look at the fact that, like, rationally adjust the look, that is stupid to do. Like, I was like, oh, come on, you should have known better. But when I started understanding the
Mm-hmm.
emotions, I think that's where the compassion and the grace came in, because I'm like, yeah, but it wasn't about the body. I just didn't know better. Now that I know why the behaviors came through. I know what I was looking for, why I was looking at certain things. I wanted the validation from my mom, from my parents. I wanted them to worry about me instead of always thinking that I was the strong one that could deal with anything. And so I wasn't getting the support, emotional support I needed. I wanted to fit in, but I'm really not a person that fits in. I'm very different in general, and now I love it. But at the time, I didn't, because especially on an island like Mauritius, you don't want to be the weird one because it's freaking small. Everybody knows everybody. So I think when I look back, if I look at the emotional side, that's what gave me a little bit of compassion for myself, because I was like, okay, it was so much deeper than that. You weren't shallow. You just didn't know how to really like verbalize what you were going through inside. So you were just projecting in the most easy way, which is control your body, is what everybody sees and it's what you see. Because I didn't know how to look inside and see the real trauma. I didn't even know I had it. I always thought, well, no, stuff happens. My parents divorced. Who cares? I've witnessed some violence at home. Who cares? It's fine. It's gone. It's been the past, but actually wasn't. Like, it did affect me. I just didn't know.
So perfect. So you guys may be noticing that Chantal has a slightly different background. So just a little bit of internet issues, but we're making it work to get you guys a good episode. So Chantal, basically the question I wanted to ask you before the internet went out was, we talked a lot about emotions and kind of dealing with trauma that kind of triggered some of these nutritional habits that you had. In your on your website, you talk about the dark night of the soul, and I think you brought it up that it started happening in your early 30s. So, like, what is the dark night of the soul?
Yeah, actually started happening in my late 30s. When I turned 38 or
Okay.
39. Basically, we moved from London to Portugal, where, first of all, the intention was being in nature, as I mentioned at the beginning, but also creating a retreat. And I bought a farm that was basically stones, like there was nothing left. And I managed that project, not knowing the language, not knowing anything really about the culture here, having to deal with a lot of machismo. There's a very patriarchal society in Portugal. Women are not valued like they should be. And I just came from a very open um, environment, like London. Everybody kind of respects everybody in a while, like in a way, because it's a very forward
Yeah.
thinking society. And I started just experiencing so much stress because I was going 2 weeks back to London, 2 weeks here. So that accumulated. Then in 2016, before that, that was 2018, I had personal stuff going on in my relationship. And we went through it. But again, because I didn't have that self love that I started having for myself lately, I condoned a lot of behaviors that were not, I mean, I'm very proud of it, but they were not satisfying what I wanted. I was all about making my partner the center of the attention. Like he needed support, he needed to heal, I needed to be the understanding one. And then this project
Yeah.
happened, and it was back and forth, back and forth. Then 2019, we moved here, and it was a shock in a way because different rhythm. I left my job in London. I didn't have my routine. I now had this place that was huge, is huge. um, I had to take care of so many things. I broke my wrist. This is when my mom was supposed to help me when she came over, and if instead I found myself having my family over that I had to look after. And I just started having these really deep feelings that I never felt before. And I recognized them later. They were from childhood. There was a lot of anger and resentment. The fact that I felt like I never had a mother, and then it just came up when I needed her, and she wasn't even able to give me that. And I just felt so angry, and I was already feeling the adrenal fatigue. I was exhausted from all the traveling up and down, dealing with the stress, with the um, builder, with the situation here. And I think everything came up, and I didn't feel support. I didn't feel support from my husband. I didn't feel support from my family. I was so angry. And then 2020 happened, and I had the summer booked with retreats, so I was really looking forward to being busy and doing the best thing, what I can do best, which is either teaching or support, or hosting. And then COVID happened, and nothing happened. And although at the beginning I was pissed off about it,
Yeah.
I actually realized that I wasn't really in a mind space to do anything. So it was God sent, because I was now facing that dark night of the soul, which is me staring at myself. And I had kind of put everything aside, including looking at myself in the mirror. I had gained, I don't even know, I was 70 plus kilos. And I hadn't looked at myself in the mirror for the longest time. I just knew that I felt overwhelmed every day, that I woke up in the morning exhausted, that if anybody said anything to me, I would just explode and be upset and angry that they even talked to me, like they even said good morning. This is all my family, because I had this, it was family stuff that was boiling to the top. And I didn't feel supported.
Yeah.
Everybody was just criticizing me about, you are this, you are that, my behavior. And I just felt so lonely, because I'm like, I am suffering, I'm struggling. And I kept on saying to Kyle, I am feeling like I'm going to explode. I know my hormones are not right. I just didn't know what to do. I kept on saying I needed help, and nobody was there to help me. And then when the world stopped in 2020, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I got the shock of my life, because I was like, where am I? I felt like I was living in a body that wasn't mine. And I realized at that time my soul
Yeah.
was crying for help. This is the dark night of the soul. It's like, it's you staring at you, not just physically, but like the emotions and the stuff that you have to work on. And then I said to myself, okay, I'm 40. I was 40, yeah, 4 years ago. So 40. Um, I'm 40, and I'm feeling like crap, and I'm looking like crap. And I'm like, and I don't even want to be on this planet anymore. What do I do? And no, it's 39, because yeah, I'm 43 now. So, but anyway, that around that age. And I didn't want to, when I woke up in the morning, I was disappointed that I was waking up, and I just thought, this is not a normal behavior. um, and I just thought, if I don't
Yeah.
take matters into my hand and I make some changes, I shouldn't be here. I should take my life. I just didn't have the courage to do it. I'll be honest. I just didn't. I wanted to. I was just really wanting not to wake up anymore, but I didn't have the guts to do it. And I decided, if I can do that, then I have to get better, because what am I going to do? Stay in the state of depletion, anger, feeling sick? I mean, it's not the way I want to live. And I started working on myself and doing all this work, like eating better, dieting. Not dieting in the sense before, but like actually correcting my diet, because I had stayed vegan, but I was eating a lot of processed food because I was just like comfort, support with the
Yeah.
food that I was having. I didn't care about anything but what I could put in my body just to survive, lots of comfort food. So I stayed vegan, but I was eating junk food. And then I decided, okay, I am going to just change all this. And this is when I started looking at my diet as, once again, nourishing my body, supporting my body, healing my body. And the food became a companion to that journey, because now it wasn't about the food either. I was like, okay, I'm going to put the best food in my body, not because of the food, but actually because I want to heal what I'm feeling. I need to understand where that comes from. And to do that, I need to be strong mentally and physically. So I need to feed my body with the best food, which is whole foods, which are plants, nothing processed. I started understanding what my hormones wanted. So even grains, like things like whole grains that are brilliant, I can't really take rice. I can't take things like that anymore. I can have quinoa sometimes. I can have sweet potatoes, but I can't actually have lots of starches. Like my body doesn't like it. So I started realizing all that and being like, okay, I'm going to give you what you need, body, but so that I can do the work that I need to do internally, because ultimately that's the most important thing. And and I started feeling that because I was doing that, my soul was actually thanking me. And I was like, okay, there's a lot of trauma here, a lot of struggle, but the beautiful thing is that I now feel part of nature. I feel part of like the bigger universe. I feel part of the source. I feel part of something that is way beyond me, much bigger, that maybe I can't even describe in words other than is universal love. And I can work on myself through that by forgiving myself, by forgiving my lineage, by forgiving everything, because I realized actually that that was like a slap in the face in a way, because you feel so crap, but it was also a beautiful way to to see that if people don't do the work, you also have to be compassionate about where they're at, because they just don't know better. Now that doesn't justify bad behavior or laziness or anything. It doesn't justify anything, but it gives you perspective where like, I'm not going to get angry. I am just going to work on how I react to things so that I can be a better version of myself, because ultimately I am doing the work for me and I can make other people do the work. And so that really just triggered this healing. But at the same time, it does come with a little bit of a price to pay, because when you are doing the work and you're seeing things change, you also notice if there are people in your life that perhaps are not going in the same direction. And that could be your partner, your wife, your whatever. For me, it was a lot of that. And I always say, like last year, I think that cycle kind of came to fruition where I just felt so strong and grounded. I felt like my work now have purpose, like I'm focusing on women, because I understood what I was doing here. And I noticed that a lot of women were feeling the same way that I did, at different levels, different degrees, but a lot of things that they were going through were very similar to mine. And I'm like, okay, I know what I have to do here. I'm supporting women to go through this dark night of the soul, because ultimately in our age group it's going to happen. And you know, a lot of the symptoms of this are the same, like the marriage is falling apart, and your relationships are changing, and your purpose is changing, and you have to make tough decisions. And I think I have seen all that. And so last year, I started living in Portugal. I started actually being present here, because for the past 5 years, 4 years before that, I was existing here because I had so much healing to do. So grateful because I had the space to do it. I wouldn't have been able probably to do it in London with the stress, but also, wow, it was a tough, like, whew. and and so this is really where the dark night of the soul is the biggest teacher. And if you don't face it, if you don't see it and face it, it can either consume you by making you feel miserable and horrible for the rest of your life because you're not working. Some people are really good at just putting it at the
Mm.
back of their mind, sending it back in the subconscious, and keep on living a life that they know is not fulfilling, but they just don't want to rock the boat. They don't have the strength to know that they have to make tough decisions. Because again, the it's not just looking in the mirror, seeing that part of you that needs healing, but it's also the fact that you know that if you start making decisions for yourself, when you start loving yourself enough to say, this is not good enough for me, I want more, things will change around you. Because sometimes the interactions, the dynamics around you are there because you compromised something or you behaved in a way, and if you change your behavior, these dynamics will change as well, right? So this is really what happened, and this is what it's happening. So in a way, I'm going through another transition now. My personal life is kind of falling apart that way, but I'm also rebuilding, knowing that actually I don't want to live in a shell of myself. Like, I don't want to be always putting someone else in front of me just because I need to be, the supportive one. I want to be supportive. That's my nature. I love it. But I also want to be supportive to me. I I don't want to struggle. I don't want to be resentful that I didn't put my priorities too forward, that I didn't count enough, that I would be a priority, that I was like, you can handle it, so you can be at the back of the row. Why? Then I'm not shining. I'm not being my best self. This is what the dark night of the soul showed me
Yeah.
anyway.
So, several things I want to say to that. First of all, like
Yeah.
I'm proud of you for going through that process because it's challenging, and you see how long it takes to go through that process. And I feel that COVID was that opportunity for everyone
Hmm.
because I feel like you said, like you were flying back and forth. You had a lot of things on your plate. Most people keep themselves busy. They keep themselves distracted with their phone, with TV, with Netflix, because it's scary to just sit with yourself
Yeah.
and your own thoughts and to confront the reality of like who you are, where you're at in your life. And COVID basically forced the world and gave you the opportunity to just pause and sit. And I think that's why there was such a high rate of depression
Yeah.
during that time, is because people were forced to sit with themselves, and people have never really done that because it was like, peak of Instagram and TikTok and Netflix, and everyone was always keeping themselves, not even the
Busy.
word busy, distracted. And when it comes to, not necessarily tied back to like you being fit and losing the weight and dealing with all of these things, but those are just secondary. Like, now that you've done the work to heal internally, how much easier is it for you to want to eat healthy, for you to prioritize your sleep, for you to move your body? It's so
Yeah.
much easier. And I feel like people that take on transformations without dealing with the trauma is just another thing they're adding to their plate to keep themselves distracted, but it never really solves the issue.
Yeah. And it's also not sustainable because, again, this stuff, there are people that can really not deal with these emotions. I mean, I sometimes I meet individuals who are so disconnected from the feelings that they really thrive in that, in a way, because they're like, I don't want to deal with the suffering. I don't have feelings. And they do it. I couldn't do it. And if you're a sensitive person, if you're an empath, you can't do it. And so your option is going to be like, deal with
Yeah.
this else. And you're right. If you don't deal with internal stuff, being fit, eating well, knowing what to eat, thinking about what food that's going to become another things on your checking list, and something that is just, okay, more to do, more to think about, rather than being in the state of flow with, well, I did this to heal myself, but actually the harder work was the emotional stuff. So definitely 100%.
So, I'd love to ask you a question
Hmm.
about being a caregiver, right? Because that's kind of like who you were for your circle. You're taking care of your mom,
Yeah.
you're supportive of your partner. You were in that position of support. And I feel like, at least in my own experience, people are in that position for two reasons. One of them is because they let themselves fall in that position because they don't want to confront their own things to discover who they truly are, to live the life that they want. So one, it's like you kind of by default, you're pushed in that by the people around you. And the other scenario is people consciously choose to be a caregiver so that they don't have to deal with this thing,
Yeah.
right? So one of it is subconscious, one of it is conscious. Which boat were you in? Were you consciously putting yourself in a position of support so you didn't have to deal with it, or did you just subconsciously get pushed in that direction?
I think I subconsciously was pushed in that direction because that's all I knew since I was a child. Um, so
Mm,
I didn't know any better, but it was also because no, it was definitely subconscious. I just didn't know that I didn't have enough self love to know that if I would put my priorities first, people could still love me. Because then I was naturally taught to be a caregiver, but at the same time, my self worth was so connected to that sorry for the background
yeah,
noise, so connected to that
it's
I
okay.
just couldn't not be the caregiver, because I'm like, if I'm not the caregiver, will people actually like me or love me if I'm not taking care of everything? Because
Mm,
who am I otherwise, right? Outside this personality, outside this profile that I've been given, what am I? Who am I? It was very subconscious in a way, but I also attached this feeling that if I am not that person, if I don't take care, if this is not my behavior, if I don't take on that profile, will people actually love me for me? Who am I? Right? I never really had that discussion with myself up to basically 3 years ago, because I really didn't know. I didn't know that you could do that. Only when I started feeling resentful that I was given that role did I actually start thinking about these questions and start thinking about, hold on. And I've noticed that actually people know they don't necessarily always love you if you put yourself first, right? Um, I tried,
yeah,
yeah, on a personal level, I tried to explain a lot of this to my husband, but I see that he doesn't see it. So this is why we are going through a separation, because I don't think I understand. He probably feels a lot of the stuff that I don't understand, but he doesn't communicate his feelings, and I can't guess. And but I get blamed for how I what choices I'm making. I'm for sure.
yeah. And I feel like maybe a light bulb just kind of came on for people that are listening, because I feel like a lot of people may be doing that subconsciously, right? Subconsciously we will fold to other people's standard and expectations so that we can feel loved. But one thing that I say learned and experienced on my side is when my late partner was going through her cancer, before she got sick, she had so many people around her. They were
Hmm.
friends, they were hanging out. And then when she got sick, there was like four
Gone.
people left.
Yeah.
And so when you start to truly be yourself and love yourself and do the things that align for your life and for you to live your best life, you may be shocked by how few people are left, but the few people that are left would take a bullet for you.
Yeah.
Like those are the people that you need love for, not all those other strangers that were just there because you were serving them
Yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And I think the other part of this is also, and I think this is probably why in my relationship specifically, um, maybe why things are falling apart with my husband is I I urge him to do the work. Like he has trauma too, but it's spiritual bypassing a
We all
lot.
do.
We all do, and he doesn't want to hear it. He doesn't want to hear that there is work that he still has to do on a practical level as well as the spiritual level, because he's really working on a lot of the spiritual stuff. But you can't spiritual bypass trauma. You truly have to face it head on, and there will be people in your life that you have to have conversations with. Like I had to have a conversation with my mother, and a lot of people will have someone
Yeah.
in their life that they have to have a conversation with about the trauma, because some of these people are the triggers or the cause, the source of the trauma, because they also have the trauma and they need to heal, and you want to help them heal if possible. Of course it's not always possible, people have to want to do the work, but when you realize who
Yeah.
they are and
Yeah.
you
Everyone's
point it
on their own
out.
timeline. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And a child can be very much a starting point for the healing of a parent. It's not always the other way around, right? It's not just the parent that has to guide the child towards healing. I think if a son or a daughter gets to a point in their life where they are really doing this work and realizing certain things, you can be the shining light for your parent because they never had that example, and they might take it and might not take it. um, but this is, where I think sometimes it can go really wrong, and it can be, again, with your parents, with your partner. You are going to be like, hey, you know what, this is what I found. I think I've noticed, I've seen that you have these things happening and you should work on them. And they might completely reject it, or they might embrace it and be like, thank you, I'm gonna look into this because I feel like you're onto something. Unfortunately, you can't control the people's reactions.
Yeah, and I feel like a big part is make people being aware that there are things to deal with. Like everyone knows, but everyone numbs themselves to
Yeah.
it until they have the ability to like sit down and think. Like I take a 1 week vacation every 2 months where I just completely disconnect from online. I just came back from one, and that is my time for me to deal with me, for
Yeah.
me to do other things and realign and reassess. And I feel like people don't take that time for them. Now, I know not everyone can take a week off every 2 months, but taking a weekend, right?
Yeah.
Every quarter, just to sit with yourself on the couch and not watch TV and do nothing and see what comes up, right?
Yeah.
Have a pen and a paper and see what comes up in your head. I think people would be very surprised as to what they end up writing down. So I love to ask you,
Mm.
what does live lean health represent to you?
Yeah. So I think it's evolved in my head since I started in 2013. But um, live, obviously, it's like living, right? Being present, living, um, being really in your life fully, being present, being the author. Life doesn't happen to you. You can completely um, script what your life should be. You don't want to control everything, you can't, but what I mean is your decision have an outcome, and so being aware that whatever decision you make, you have to think about the consequence, good and bad. And if you are mindful in living fully in your life, the consequences are positive for the most part. And even when they are negative, because you're living, you are you kind of appreciate the lessons. So that's why live. Lean had many different reasons. Obviously, lean as in physical, because I with time, it's like you shed off the things that are protecting you, and the more you become aware and connected to your inner self, the leanness is just natural because you don't hide anymore. But also lean in the sense of letting go of clutter. Like, do you need to have so much clutter around? And the truth is that you don't have to have that. That you do you a simple life that is lean of all the clutter and all this stuff that is on top, that is busy, it's beautiful, and you can live that way. And then health, of course, embraces, that health which is mental, physical, and spiritual health, which is very holistic in its approach. So yeah, live lean health that's what it symbolizes, which is, some people told me, why don't you change your business name to make it something a little bit more easier and like get catchier? And I'm like, I really can't let go of this because of the symbolism and of the words and what they mean for me, what they have transformed to mean for me throughout the years.
Yeah. Yeah. People are funny with business names. You pick the one that you
I
like.
know.
So, um, Chantal, like I know we didn't have a chance to talk too much about some of the work that you do, but do you mind kind of sharing with us, briefly what it is the work that you do and where can people learn more about, again, your podcast and all of these things?
Yeah, sure. So my podcast is more like sharing the goodies. It's like it was also part of my healing journey, wanting to talk to people that were very much aligned with what the path I was on to heal myself. And so this is why I have amazing people like you and other doctors and healers, and it's just really a progress, like a personal journey. It was a personal project. But the work that I do is very much focused on holistic health. So as I said before, the nutrition is a very much a foundation of it, because to me, if you're looking after your body, then your soul has a very healthy temple to live in, so that you can fulfill your potential. Because even the fact that you wake up in the morning and you have energy instead of being exhausted and overwhelmed is such a great space to start, right? So nutrition is very important, personalized nutrition. So everybody has sort of, like you do it, you have to tackle what people need specifically. I work with women mostly because it's all, for me, hormones are like beautiful. I started calling them messengers, like angels, because they sorry, I have a kitty cat here. So this is
Oh,
great.
that's a cute cat.
It's so loud.
For the people on YouTube, you saw it. We're going to keep it on the shot.
Yeah, here. Hello, Gray. Say hello. There you go. Look how loud he is.
Oh, that's such a cute sound. Yeah,
Thank you for being on the
that's so
podcast.
cute.
It's super. So and basically, yeah, it's basically like working with women mostly, because hormones to me, they can't, this came to me as like angels, right? They're messengers that tell the body everything and what's going on and what to open, what to close. So working with the different cycles that we have as women is such a privilege, and so understanding that, that's what I really really focus on, which is why I love working with women. And in the process of working with the body and the physiology and the biology, I also work with the empowerment part. So working on what women really need to feel like they are fulfilling their potential, to go through the dark night of the soul, to actually appreciate that there is a little bit of hard work to do. But as women, we are really going through a stage. I think it's a time in our life where, well, maybe because we are in the age of Aquarius as well, but it's where we can fulfill a strong potential, where we can really really feel empowered and we can be ourselves, that now it's acceptable for a woman to make decisions which are harsh, and we don't have to be like men, we don't have to compete like to with men, we don't have to have a toxic femininity coming through, which I feel like feminism unfortunately is what has become in a lot of ways, because the softness can be very strong, and the
Hmm.
that compassion can be very much a strength, can be very much a way to lead the world forward. It doesn't have to be forceful and violent. That's toxic masculinity, and I think a lot of the feminists have taken that on. Like, I don't know if you noticed this, but like a lot of politicians look, there are women, and people are like, oh, women politicians, but they look like men, they act like men. Like, why? We have to
Mm.
tap into this beautiful balance of feminine and masculine,
Yeah.
which are two energies we all have because our creators is duality, and actually bring it forward. And the feminine has been missing from the planet. So I really believe that women have that job now to bring forth that balance. So this is what I work with. And I'm online. I'm on Instagram is where I'm mostly active. I live lean health. And then I started TikTok. I don't know how to navigate TikTok. I'm trying to understand it. It does my head in, but I'm trying. And then I'm a little bit on YouTube, slowly growing the channel since the podcast. And I try to share weekly weekly shares about what's going on, like tips to stay healthy and tapping into yourself, and like whatever I'm feeling I actually share it. I don't have a script for anything. I just really navigate what I'm going through, and I'm like, this is actually really really resonating. And then I kind of pick up on the cues around me, and I see that a lot of people are bringing it up. I'm like, okay, maybe I should tap into this, and so I shared stuff like that. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. So for the people listening, I will put all the links down below to your website, to YouTube, to the podcast, to your Instagram, so
Thank you.
they can go and check it out and support you and inquire if they
Thank
have
you.
any questions. And Chantal, massive thank you for taking the time to jump on the podcast. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed it. So be sure to go support her links, and we'll see you all in the next episode. Bye.
Thank you, Maxime. Bye.